Welcome. My name is Steve Nation. This is the second day of the Arcane School Conference, and it's a very interesting experience doing this because I have to have in mind that I see a beautiful group of faces in front of me here, and at the same time, I don't know exactly how many, but I can imagine there'll be a few hundred or 173. Okay, so there are 173 of you who are participating on Zoom. So welcome all. This is a hybrid meeting, and it's an experiment for us to be able to, all of us, those of you on Zoom, those of you here in the Anthroposophical Society Hall in New York, to hold in mind the thought of one group mind actually located consciously, physically together at this time. Part of that involves working with technology, and Michael's going to lead us through some of the technology that particularly those of you working on Zoom will need to follow. And just to say, to have a huge thank you to Michael, and I know to Kevin and others as well, who have done so much to figure out all of this stuff of Zoom, and then to deal with all of the stress that comes in the moment when the connection doesn't work.
Thank you, Steve. Just a few very brief, I think we have some sound feedback here.
Yep, sorry, I'll do that.
So just a few quick technical notes for those of you who are joining us via Zoom. We do have Spanish translations today. I'm just going to pause to get the feedback. So those of you who are joining us on Zoom, just a few quick technical notes. We do have Spanish translation today. The talks are being live translated into Spanish. You can change your audio to the Spanish channel by going to the interpretation button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will also have a discussion period today, albeit somewhat brief. And those of you who are on Zoom that would like to share during that time, you can do so by raising your hand, and there should be an option to raise hand on your Zoom toolbar at the bottom there. And that's about it. So I'm going to hand it back over to Steve now.
Thanks, Michael. So, we're continuing today in our work when we're pondering this keynote. Let the light of the seven rays blend with the seventh ray, and light supernal usher in the new civilization. And this is an ongoing rhythmic work. We've worked this weekend with this keynote, and then next month we will continue this work based from, first of all, from Geneva and then from London. And we're going to begin our work this afternoon with a brief alignment, followed by the sounding of the Great Invocation, first in Spanish and then in English. Of course, from the New York Center, we're working with the Americas, and it's primarily two language groups, Spanish and English. So my colleague who heads the Arcane School work in Spanish in the Americas, Laura Ospina.
Thank you, Steve. Desde el punto de luz en la mente de Dios, que afluya luz a las mentes de los hombres, que la luz descienda a la tierra. Desde el punto de amor en el corazón de Dios, que afluya amor a los corazones de los hombres, que Cristo retorne a la tierra. El propósito que los maestros conocen y sirven. Desde el centro que llamamos la raza de los hombres, que se realice el plan de amor y de luz y selle la puerta donde se halla el mal. Que la luz, el amor y el poder restablezcan el plan en la tierra. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth.
So this weekend we're working within the period leading up to the Taurus full moon and the Wesak festival. The full moon will be just 14 minutes after midnight tonight for those of us here in the eastern sort of zone of the Americas. And the final session today, this afternoon, will be focused on Wesak with a talk by Christine Morgan, the president of the Lucis Trust, who'll be joining us from London and will then lead the Wesak form in meditation. We're going to watch timing a little bit this afternoon because we really do need to start that at 3:30 because people will be joining just for the Wesak meeting. So we want to try and keep our time as close as we can. It's never easy, you find, for us. But before that, before the Wesak, we're going to hear from Kathy Newburn from the Arcane School section of the New York headquarters. And Kathy will be speaking about the Great Invocation as a seventh ray mantram. And this will be followed by a session with 3 speakers, which we're really looking forward to because it brings the whole part of the East, the whole consciousness of the East. We think of the East and the West. And we're going to be joined, all 3 speakers will be speaking via Zoom. Bang Ngoc Trai from Vietnam, who's been a student of the teachings for many, many years in Vietnam. Reiko Nakanishi from Japan, from Tokyo in Japan, who's one of the founding people of Esoteric Tokyo, and Zed James, who's coming in a sense, representing the East and the esoteric teachings of the West, and he'll be speaking from Austin, Texas. All will be bringing this Eastern perspective to our reflections on the keynote, and that'll be followed by a really an interactive session. It's called a panel discussion, but what that means is a chance for all of us, physical Zoom, to engage and share thoughts and to work together as a group in consciousness with this keynote. This is an Arcane School conference. Next year, the Arcane School will have been operating for 100 years. And throughout this period, these 100 years, students from around the world have continued non-stop, rhythmically, practicing a program of organized and focused meditation and study of the esoteric teachings, grounded through countless individual lives of service, tension, crisis, tension, and emergence, hopefully emergence, certainly crisis and tension, and through shared group service projects for goodwill and triangles. The keynote moves from the premise that the human crisis of our time, with its chaotic and traumatic impact on psyche and society, and with its unbelievable intensity of stress in the entire human family, that this human crisis is at the same time a spiritual crisis. And it offers us a way of understanding what is occurring to us as a human community in our full humanity, to understand what is occurring from the perspective of the hierarchy, of the spiritual hierarchy, and from the perspective of the plan. In other words, detaching ourselves from what we see with our two eyes and all of our human constitution, and looking through the eyes of the soul. We're challenged to deepen our understanding of how this rather abstruse idea of the keynote relates to the interlocking, challenging, and in many ways disturbing set of crises we face today as individuals, so many individuals in crisis, as families, communities, nations, and as a species. And at all of these levels, becoming conscious that we are facing a crisis, that our humanity, all of our human qualities are not sufficient to resolve, forcing us to call on the soul. Since the end of the Second World War, the esoteric teachings suggest that humanity has been subjected to an ever-mounting wave of lighted energies pouring into consciousness, preparing humankind to pass through an initiation. A significant event, not just for we human beings, but for all life on the planet. When we talk of initiation, it takes us into a realm of mythology and of understanding from the perspective of metaphysics. The 7 basic rays of lighted energies that have been pouring into the field of the human in modern times have stimulated and energized 7 fundamental aspects of consciousness: will, love, and intelligence in the human being, the human species. Will, love, intelligence. Conflict that has purpose because it leads to harmony. Science and knowledge. Idealism and devotion. And that seventh ray of order, rhythm, and magical processes through which, through the human, matter is able to be transformed in such a way that it reflects the radiation and vitality of the indwelling spirit. Work of the human magician. In the simplest terms, this keynote invites us to look at our times. In the simplest terms, this keynote invites us to look at our times as if all seven rays are in process of being focused in and through the light of the seventh ray, suggesting that the incoming light will find location and expression on the physical plane. And this requires not so much that we look at the physical, what we see with our eyes, the outer physical realm, but that we look for spirit, livingness, and vitality in the forms of living, directing our attention to areas where the spirit of oneness is finding intelligent and magical expression in form as the new civilization in embryo. Here, in a sense, it's looking at form in terms of relationships. All of these relationships, think of groups of governance, of economics, of health and healthcare, of education. And this invites us to take our eyes away from the necessary disturbance and disruption of the times so that we might better see where our new etheric vitality is emerging in the way human beings organize their relationships. Where do we see this livingness in international relations, in religion, in economics, in health and relations with the environment? And that's a question that each one of us is challenged. The important thing is, where do I see this vitality? And how do I train my eyes and train the way I look to see livingness and to see this fresh initiatory experience, which we're just on the threshold of? Where do we see organizations that truly function as organisms? Not talking about it, but where when we enter the home, the space, the office of the organization, we sense the vitality of the organism, radiating the light of a group purpose through all its structures and relationships with those they serve and those they work with. And that's a very different thing from so much modern organizational theories that look so concretely. We take a simpler view, we look at the spirit of the livingness of purpose in its relation with the human beings who are seeking to give expression to that purpose. One of the essential thoughts in the keynote is that as the incoming light of each ray blends with and is synthesized through the seventh ray, this light finds location on the physical plane and begins to manifest in the world of the human. And one of the difficulties of the seventh ray is that it can lead to an overstimulated formalism, where an intense focus on form ignores the spirit seeking expression through form. And one of the qualities of the seventh ray that we might expect to see emerging in human affairs is the sort of care for detail that ensures that the spirit and purpose of a project is expressed through all the various steps and stages of the project. We need to train ourselves to see spirit and form, to see it in vitality and beauty, in order and rhythm in the human response to the sense of oneness. We see this where the elemental lives of form resonate with the clear light of purpose and of sensed or intuited wholeness. And it can also be seen where there is a living, universal recognition of the sacred, and where human beings work through organizations, systems, and processes that carry some resonance of the glory of the One. The most important takeaway for me in this keynote is the way it can impact how we look at time in the world of time and space. Such a fundamental part of the work of an esoteric group is to refine the sense of the future under the relation between the present and the future, and for the group to live in this relationship between the present and the future, bringing the two together. This keynote invites us to look for a plan that is unfolding through human agency and human creativity, unfolding now in the midst of such chaos and crisis, and all the time leading our species towards initiation. When we really take this keynote to heart, it should have a significant impact on our use of the Great Invocation, which is why it's so appropriate for Kathy to be speaking about the invocation. And our understanding of the prophecy, in a sense, the whole of the invocation can be placed into this prophecy that in our time, whatever that means, depending on the age, I see all sorts of different ages here. In our time, the Christ will return, this Christ being, the radiance of the Christ will return to inaugurate a new culture, because we ourselves are unable to do it. We require, in all humility, we require this great being to once again stand in human form to inaugurate a new culture with a new living sense of the sacredness of life.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Steve. You helped me realize again through your words how little seventh ray I have in my nature, which many of you would attest to who work with me.
True.
No, it's quite true. Anyway, so as Foster Bailey used to say, knowing nothing, I'll speak freely. So as Steve said, I'd like to just share a few points with you about the Great Invocation, which is a seventh ray mantram. And I think I had the wrong title. I should have said the seventh ray mantram. It's not any old seventh ray mantram. And it's appropriate to do so because we're moving into a seventh ray age. And Steve described somewhat the nature of that age. And the power of this invocation, this prayer, this meditation is in fact that it is encompasses all three of those things. It is a multi-layered approach to deity. And so to use it, we have to summon our aspiration. We have to bring in our thoughts, our mind, and then we have to project those energies towards the highest or will aspect. And we make our alignment, and then as the Tibetan says, we pray. And I think it's sort of hard to encompass all of those activities in once and then simply pray, but that's what we're charged to try and do. And we're asked to try and find the underlying abstract idea, which we're told exists within this invocation. And it's our task then to bring down the energies to earth and ground them within the center humanity. So it's interesting to note that the invocation is said to be, on the one hand, the Christ's own mantram, and it was first used at the Gemini full moon the Christ Festival, which is also known as the Festival of Humanity. For it's through humanity that this invocation must be anchored. And it's really our invocation as well as the Christ's. It was launched here in New York City in 1945 at the end of the Second World War. The victory of the Allied forces released this great prayer. And it's also the time when the world teacher, the Christ, made the decision to return to humanity much sooner than had originally been intended. So Alice Bailey gathered together in a hotel room in New York a group of Arcane School students. She said to seal the room to make sure none of the hotel helpers came in. It was a sacred time. And she asked the students gathered there to simply listen to the sound of the words. She said, curiously enough, she said, don't focus on their meaning, but focus on the sound. And this was rather curious considering all of the information that we've been given out about the invocation in terms of its meaning, its understanding. But it seemed that as she launched this very sacred prayer, she wanted to do so in a very sacred kind of mantric manner, guided by the impulse of the higher forces that we know were there working with her at this time. She wanted the group, it seems, to become a pure channel for the light supernal to enter in, because we're told in the teachings that the giving out of this invocation was the first instance in our world of the entry of the light supernal into the world. It's a very special, as Steve said, a very rarefied light that's always existed, we're told, on the higher levels of human mind and heart. But it was only then, as it's grounded through this seventh ray mantra, that it could pour out through the etheric physical plane in that hotel room in New York City. So during a recent Triangles webinar, we were opening it up to the group and asking them to share with us some of the ways in which they use the invocation. It's a prayer for all humanity, as stated. And so some of the responses were quite interesting, and I just wanted to share a few of them with you. Some people shared how they like to use the invocation in movement, and I too have found this to be quite powerful. Some use mudras, some use ritualistic movements when sounding the great invocation. One man shared how he daily would jog around the Capitol in Washington, D.C., sounding the invocation. And I think we might need a little more of that today. And one woman highlighted the real importance of using the invocation between this time, between the Wesak full moon and the Gemini full moon. This is the high point of the spiritual year. This is when the most intense light and love and power are pouring into our planet. And so to really keep it in our minds and hearts and use it as much as we can during these 4 weeks, and I would say even through to the summer solstice point, we're providing a real service to the world. Because one of the women on the webinar also expressed the understanding that during a turning point, during the tide of the war, I think it was 1942, it was said that the invocation, an earlier version of the invocation, was used by people, and it was said by the Tibetan to help turn the tide of that war towards the forces of light. So potent is its use. Some people express their understanding of how it's important to say the invocation in a rhythmic and as a demand, that it's not a peace prayer, and we shouldn't turn it into a peace prayer. It's an invocative spiritual demand. And then earlier today, I thought I would share what one woman in a group meeting shared about a recent experience she had in using the invocation. Specifically, the last line of the invocation, let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. She said that when she uses that line, she visualizes a sphere, the sphere representing humanity, and in the center is a dot, which is representative of the spirit aspect. And then while she says that final line, she radiates the dot out towards the circumference of the sphere. But she said that when she was doing this for the last 2 months, when she got about 80% out, there was a block. It was as if the energies couldn't radiate out through the sphere. And she said that only yesterday, being here at the time of the build-up to Wesak, in a planetary center with a spiritual group, the energies broke through the astral barriers that had been there, and the energies radiated with flaming red lights of fire, burning away the dross. So I thought that was particularly powerful and hopeful for the work that we're here doing together. And then another individual shared that he found a lot of insight into the use of the Great Invocation in a particular ancient rule that was given out by the Tibetan in the book, The Rays and the Initiation, specifically Rule 8, which is called the Law of the Supplementary Seven. And I too, coincidentally, had been studying that rule specifically in relationship to the Great Invocation. So it was like a synchronicity between two people's thoughts. And I would suggest for anyone who wants to read that rule, to study that rule as a way of deepening our understanding of the invocation, which we're told comes from 7 ancient word forms. We know that all things, all creation, resonate to the number 7, and later synthesized to the 3, and then to the 1. And so while the invocation is the Christ's own mantra, it's ultimately said to be the most complete utterance of the Logos himself. So the 7 ancient word forms certainly relate to the 7 rays, which are the emanating source of all things within our system. And the invocation becomes a vehicle for these influences to work out through the 7 great lords in Shambhala, with their reflection in the 7 departmental heads within the spiritual hierarchy. And they work out, we're told, through the 7 groupings of individuals on the physical plane, perhaps the ray groupings or the groupings of our service work. And then they find these 7 influences find their reflection in the head centers, the 7 head centers of the initiates, and the 7 centers of the spine. So all things, all influences, merge and blend within a tapestry of light, which is the understanding that we have of the plan. And it is this synthetic structure which underlies all that is happening in the world today. And this synthesis is what the invocation fosters. It's the basis for the growing 3-way interrelationship that we're told is being established now between hierarchy, Shambhala, and humanity. For the first time in planetary history, this synthesis is evolving, and we're told that it's very much related to our use of the Great Invocation. And the invocation work also relates to the ability to all 3 centers to work through united breath and a unified rhythm. That's the ultimate understanding of what the invocation is about. So the establishment of this interrelationship permits an influx of extraplanetary and extra-systemic energies to pour into our world. It's not just about the planetary centers. Their synthetic interrelationship permits entry of higher forces. And one of them might be from the great star Sirius, because we are told by the Tibetan that the invocation is a solar instrument. And I don't think that relates just to our logos, but to our solar logos, but also to the great star Sirius, with which our planet has a particularly important connection. Because if it is the Christ's own mantra, he's known as a Syrian initiate. And so the growing ability for our great teacher, the Christ, to establish a greater connection with that great star Sirius is surely, I believe, related to the shifting and changing of the keynote of the Wesak festival, of this festival that we're working towards tonight, as Steve said. And I think that moving forward, we're told the keynote is going to change of Wesak, and I think it's going to be related to the new group of world servers taking on a key role more fully at this Taurus festival, the new group being ruled by Taurus. And moving forward, the Christ festival will become much more powerful. But returning a little closer to home and closing, I'd like to say that surely the use of the invocation helps us to understand humanity's destiny. And we're told that this destiny of humanity is related to a curious phrase given out both in the Secret Doctrine and in the teachings of the Tibetan, which says that one of our purposes as a human kingdom is to work with what's called the saving force. An earlier version of the Great Invocation spoke of this time in which we're living, and I don't think they just meant the time leading up to the Second World War, but the time now, spoke of this as the hour of service of the saving force has now arrived. Let it be spread abroad, Almighty One. The hour of service of the saving force. And certainly this saving force is needed in our world today. It's related, we're told, to the emerging destiny of humanity as a kingdom to release this radiatory energy, this saving force. It's said to be our special function in saving and regenerating nature. This redemptive force is the underlying theme of our entire planetary life, not just humanity. And it's said to be the result of the circulatory combination of the energy of the three planetary centers. And it's said that this impulse, this radiatory impulse, this saving force will gradually sweep all forms of life into a radiant magnetic potency, relating them all, one to the other, and to Shambhala. And so it's humanity's growing ability to serve as radiators of this saving force, that through this means we can move more fully into our purpose as the mediating kingdom within the planet. Through our work with this invocation, we can send forth this radiatory saving force through the planetary etheric vehicle. And through this means, our planet will begin to work within the rhythm of the cosmic heart, the heart systemic, and within our little hearts, and will beat in rhythmic unison.
Wow, thank you, Kathy. There's a lot to just hold in that. And to think of, it's interesting the way that when we use the Great Invocation, we are using it as humanity. So in a sense, we're training an aspect of ourselves to hear and see the saving force, to hear and see the whole of the new group of world servers becoming like a warrior, standing still in the midst of such stress and hearing the Great Invocation being sounded from this new muscular human mind that is about to discover the reality of soul. That's lovely. What we're going to do is we're going to move on. And we'll have a session where we can all share, but this is a really interesting time to work in thoughts. It's not so much that we are listening to talks as that the 253 of us we know all around the globe, the little group of us here, I can't count, I've only got 10 fingers, and it's a little bit more than the 10 fingers. But so it's as if one group is not just listening, but actually entering into and thinking creatively, each individual thinking creatively around the ideas that are being shared. And that's what we are experiencing. So we have a treat now, Eastern Perspectives and Experiences. It sounds lovely, to me anyway, and I think it will be. We have three, we're delighted to have three presenters, and I wonder if just for a moment you can, are you there, Ngok Choi? Can you unmute yourself, Ngok Choi, and say hello?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Ah, you're here, beautiful.
Yeah.
Ngok Choi, can you turn your video on, please? Ah, beautiful. Thank you. Now we see you. Ngok
Yeah.
Choi will be speaking to us about the Great Invocation and the Ageless Wisdom in Vietnam. He's been working for many years introducing the Great Invocation and group meditation work throughout Vietnam. So, Ngoc Trai, would you like to share your thoughts with us?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I am Phan Ngọc Trai from Vietnam. Do you hear me well?
Yes, we hear you very well. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for giving me the chance of presenting some thoughts about the responses to the Great Invocation and Ageless Wisdom in Vietnam. I remember receiving the Great Invocation via the Triangle Literature and AAB's book from Mr. Ngô Thanh Hà, a friend of mine and a student of Ageless Wisdom during the 1980s. Their study gradually helped me realize the importance of the Great Invocation as a world prayer and appreciate the words of Master DK that we should use the Great Invocation as a main means of world service in the coming years. At the same time, I found the Triangle folder a very suitable and easy way of contacting the men and women of goodwill and spiritual aspirants here. Therefore, it was translated into Vietnamese, and to date, we still make more efforts to disseminate both of its English and Vietnamese versions. And the Reader's Digest, December 1991 reprint of the Great Invocation to a wider circle of friends. Moreover, the use of the Great Invocation based on the power of thought as simple ways of world service was also included in the bilingual little book for the general public. I would like to say something about the the power of the thought. This was demonstrated as a fact in the book Sự liên lạc vô tuyến sinh vật, hiện tượng thần giao cách cảm. Means biological wireless communication phenomenon of telepathy by B.B. Kaczynski, Long Nai Publishing House, 1984 in Vietnam. I have not yet found the English version of this book. Maybe it was translated from Russian. And the bilingual little book for the public has a title Secret of Living Happily Right Now and Forever by Chang Chiao, published in 2010. At the same time, certain AAB books were translated into Vietnamese. At first, for internal circulation only, and later in 2008, these translation began to be sub-published in Vietnam. Thanks to the said efforts, there have been more and more readers who have been increasingly interested in the studies of ageless wisdom and taking part in spiritual endeavor such as triangle services, full moon and new moon meditation, Sunday meditation on money, Thursday meditation on preparation for the reappearance of the Christ, and 5 o'clock linking. Some of them even have gotten access to Lucidra's website and received more information therefrom. And they also let me know that they plan to have a website entirely dedicated to triangle service. Now in Vietnam, our readers have many different backgrounds from many religions and schools of thought. But these are thoughtful, are youthful ones who use scientific approach to trust based on the brotherhood of all. Therefore, we have a mutual respect for each individual free judgment, free decision, and free choice. While in an increasingly constructive cooperation. Thus, hopefully, the study of the ageless wisdom and the use of the invocation in spiritual service in Vietnam would develop steadily, though very, very slowly. I would like to share something more about the both thoughts. I think the revocation is very important, yes. But thanks to the study of the teaching of ageless wisdom, the reader will have much love for humanity and understand more about the plans of evolution, so that they will have a strong motive to use revocation regularly and with eagerness. Therefore, we will continue to have more IAB's book translated into Vietnamese and self-published via contracts signed with Lucy Trust in Geneva. And we hope that this in the coming years will have the interest from more and more readers in Vietnam and abroad. Thank you for your attention. And I am very sorry for my very, very poor listening skill and my very poor pronunciation. Therefore, if you have any question, please write it in the chat box so that I can understand and try to answer it. Thank you again.
Ngok Trai, thank you so very, very much for those words. That's very much appreciated. It brings to mind the incredible thought of all of the servers working in different language groups whose study of the teachings in order to translate those teachings, when often the word, for example, for mind or for soul or for any of the ideas is not straightforward and clear. And imagine the bringing of these teachings into consciousness, the pioneering work being done. Ngok Trai, you symbolize the work being done by translation groups over so many years in so many languages and often in smaller language groups. Thank you so much, Ngok Trai.
Thank you.
And now we pass to Tokyo, Japan. Reiko, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning from Tokyo.
Hi. There you are. With suddenly Mount Fuji has appeared behind Tokyo. So it's a great joy to have you with us together for this Arcane School Conference, Reiko.
Thank you.
Reiko is the founder, one of the co-founders with a group of co-workers who is doing beautiful work, particularly with younger people, in forming a study group centered around the teachings and relating this to many parts of Japanese culture. So, Reiko, it's actually in the room, it's difficult because we're hearing two noises. There's an echo. So, Reiko, I'm going to pass it over to you. Okay?
Okay. Okay. Yes, it's about 4 o'clock in the morning in Tokyo. Greeting from Tokyo. I would like to wish you all the best for the Wesak Festival. As you know, Tokyo is one of the 5 major global fall centers. So Michael, please have your PowerPoint, the first page. Coming? Okay, thank you. Today, I would like to talk about the emerging presence of rainfall in Japan. And next page. I first encountered Arisberry's esoteric teaching in 2014 and began studying them in 2016. Madame Blavatsky and Arisberry are not well known in Japan, but Steiner is well known as an educator. Not all of Arisberry's books have been translated. We are waiting for the publication of the Japanese edition of Cosmic Fire. The year 2022 is my 4th year since I met the global community of esoteric teaching in 2018 and established Esoteric Tokyo. On my first attendance at the Wesak conference in New York in 2018, I met co-workers from headquarters and my dear Triangle sisters and brothers. I will never forget sitting quietly in the corner on the first day because I didn't know anyone. But many people approached me kindly, and the best of all was their encouragement to continue this difficult study. Soon after returning to Japan, I established Esoteric Tokyo to introduce this ageless wisdom. So thank you, Michael. Return to live stream, please. There were only 5 of us in the beginning, but now grown to nearly 40. There are 2 reasons for the increase in a short period. First, I positioned myself as a companion rather than a teacher. Second, we call the group a circle rather than a class, and connected through voice reading and dialogue. This flat organization is rare in Japan to provide a safe and secure place where people can share the learning of spiritual paths without any teacher. Nearly 80% of the students continue their studies at Esoteric Tokyo. However, triangle meditation has not been established in our community, although it has been a significant part of our work. I have practiced and introduced triangles to the Japanese community, but still, my Japanese colleagues who are modest are not willing to try new meditation methods. However, they are eager to meditate in a circle and chant great invocation. One of the reasons they do not practice triangle is that the shape of triangle does not feel right to them. Japanese people prefer a form of circle. So here is the PowerPoint, the 3rd page. The Japanese flag, the imperial emblem, and many other Japanese symbols have circle-shaped. The Japanese pronunciation of the word circle is en. And you might have heard the Japanese currency as yen. It is the same pronunciation. So next PowerPoint, please. This pronunciation of yen also represents the Japanese word garden, destiny, and banquet, which are all related to the essence of harmony and human relationships. And next PowerPoint, please. On page 99 of Destiny of Nations, Master DK referred to Japan as Rei for soul, the same as Germany, and Rei 6 for personality, the same as Italy. He also states that the Eastern soul ray is Rei 4. You already know that Rei 4 is the energy of harmony through conflict, and is what connects the first and last three rays. Rei 4 contains the healing power of sound and color and will manifest and become influential after 2025. And next PowerPoint, please. In his book, Race and Initiations, DK mentioned in section on the effect of delayed harmony through conflict in the modern world of nations that Japan is the oldest country with a clearest unification record. As Japanese, I believe that this unifying record is a traditional religion, so-called Shinto. And next page, please. So here, as a guide to a deeper understanding of Rei-Fo, I would like to explain a little about the structure of Shinto shrines, which are the ritual buildings of Shintoism. The fascinating essence of shrine is that there is no statues there, as Buddhist temples or Catholic churches have. There is only empty space in the center of shrine, or a mirror, or a wooden pillar, because God is energy, not substance. The center of shrine is a place where Spirit of God dwell or descend, which means it must be a space. It is assumed to be similar to the structure of the human head center. So return to the live stream. The role of the priest is to create the bridge connecting the spirit to the place using voice, sound, and sometimes dance. The most famous Shinto priest in Japan is the emperor. In other words, Japan has the world's oldest family lineage in the art of transmitting divine energy down to the field. And here in Japan, through the numerous shrines. We go to play at shrines many times a year to appreciate the spirit of God. I believe this is truly a manifestation of Rei-Fo. Unfortunately, the Japanese people negatively emphasized the conflict part of Rei-Fo in the World War II. So PowerPoint, please. Okay. However, we have awakened to the peace by accepting the tragedy of the atomic bombings. We are determined not to repeat war and have proclaimed a constitution that renounces war. Now we have integrated with Western culture and explored ways to contribute to world peace. This history may represent the process of ray fall. Towards 2025, I am pondering how we can contribute to this world by presenting the essence of the harmony of rayfall. My fellow students are now learning esoteric psychology to better understand Japan through studying the 7 rays. So next PowerPoint, please. As our learning becomes more profound, we constantly feel the presence of the world group in the circle. The joy of reading the same Arisberry book with so many global students reminds us of our connection among the world servants. We always imagine ourselves in a circle with harmony within, descending the divine spirit like a shrine. So return to live stream, please. Last but not least, there are some Japanese who have opened their heart and minds to the Arisberry teaching. I believe the many years of learning accomplishment by school students around the world contain the vibration of the masters so that we can feel they are still with us. On behalf of Japanese students, I would like to express my gratitude to you all for carrying on the legacy of Arisberry. Finally, I would like to perform the sound of the Shinto rituals, which I have trained for some years. Please enjoy the sound of Japanese. To kami mitama. Thank you and arigato.
Arigato. Thank you, Reiko. Can you turn the sound down? Okay, that's better. Thank you, Reiko. That was beautiful. It's so intriguing to think of this community of students of the teachings, and to bring into that, I love, Reiko, your turning our attention to the role of the shrine in Japanese culture, and also right with that final sounds, the use of sound in ritual. And we can imagine that all cultures, as you say, Reiko, Japan has a history, a long history of bringing harmony into form through the shrine. It's one of who Japan is, and one of the gifts that Japan makes to the future civilization. And perhaps we can imagine in a multitude of different ways, all cultures, new shrines emerging, where the whole culture can enter in and experience some sense of the sacred. A little like as you say, at the center of the shrine, the lack of image being the most positive sense of spirit. Reiko, I think you've brought into our gathering a very lovely sense of the East, particularly the Far East, your world, Japan. Thank you. We're going to move on now to Dr. Zed James. Zed, are you there? Zed's joining us from, where is he? Texas. Where are you, mate? Texas?
Yes, I'm in Elgin, Texas.
Elgin, Texas. You're very welcome. Dr. Zed James is a practitioner of traditional medicine with a very extensive training, including periods of work training in China. He is the founder and director of the Phoenix Kingdom, which I suggest you have a look at on the website to see something of the beautiful work that you're doing through the Phoenix Kingdom. But today, Zed is going to talk to us in a way that brings all of your work with traditional Chinese medicine into relationship with our understanding of the etheric body and of the new way in which humanity is becoming sensitive to etheric service. But that's me. I want to hear you. Over to you.
Thank you, Steve. And thanks everyone for being here together as we celebrate this festival season. I think much has been said and written regarding the nature of the etheric body, and many traditions and cultures have speak of it in their own terms and ways through their beliefs and stories and music and histories. And I'd like to present today some of my understanding regarding this topic. It's clear to me that as we clarify in our collective conscious awareness the reality that is our etheric nature, we will do much to resolve the human kingdom of the illusion of separation. Using an occult method of inquiry, we might approach three basic questions regarding this topic. What is the etheric body? What is its nature? And what is its purpose? To understand the etheric body of man, it may serve us to look at the etheric body of our planet, as the study of each in turn reveals the nature of both. When we turn our apparatus of perception towards that aspect of the Earth's body, which was historically called etheric, we would first find evidence of something far less physical, less tangible, less dense than the various substrates of its more physical presentation. In this modern time, we might encounter several terms now available for occult study. Let's look at a few and their colloquial definitions and a few of their basic tenets. The first is called the ionosphere, which we might define as the layer of the Earth's atmosphere that contains a high concentration of ions and free electrons and is able to reflect radio waves. It lies above the mesosphere and extends from about 50 to 600 miles above the Earth's physical surface. A tenet of the ionosphere is that it is comprised of ionized by solar radiation, and it plays an important role in atmospheric electricity and forms the inner edge of the magnetosphere. This has practical importance because, among other functions, it influences radio propagation to distant places on the Earth. The second is the magnetosphere, and we may define that as the region around a planet dominated by the planet's magnetic field. Other planets in our solar system have magnetospheres, but Earth has the strongest one of all the rocky planets. And Earth's magnetosphere is a vast, comet-shaped bubble, which plays a crucial role in our planet's ongoing habitability. A few of the tenets that we may consider today in regard to the magnetosphere are as follows: that A, the solar wind is responsible for the overall shape of the Earth's magnetic sphere, and fluctuations in its speed, density, direction, and entrained magnetic fields strongly affect the Earth's local space environment. B, the inner magnetosphere is composed of 3 populations of charged particles that are trapped in the Earth's field. These particles move in circular motions and gyrate around in correspondence to the field lines or the acupuncture grid that is the planet's body of manifestation. The magnetosphere is generated by the motion of molten iron in the Earth's core, and the magnetic field protects our planet from cosmic radiation and from the charged particles emitted by our sun. It also provides the basis for navigation with a compass. And finally, the magnetosphere is the region above the ionosphere and extends several tens of thousands of kilometers into space, protecting the Earth from the charged particles of the solar wind and cosmic rays that would otherwise strip away the upper atmosphere, including the ozone layer that protects the Earth from what would occur as harmful radiation from these cosmic sources. So if we gather a few talking points from this brief synopsis, we might highlight the following keynotes. On this planet, there are several energetic aspects to the Earth's body of manifestation, which are not physical, but which inform physically. Some of these more subtle airs, which is an old term related to the definition of etheric, extend into space for hundreds or thousands of miles beyond the physical structures that are the Earth's physical body of manifestation. And without this more subtle etheric body, the Earth's physical body would undergo immense and constant restructuring from the conditional radiations that circulate more freely in the great body of space. Keeping these keynotes in mind, it is now much easier to discuss in a more tangible manner the etheric body of humanity. Each human unit comprising the collective human kingdom is a microcosm of its greater environment, living as we do within the etheric body of the Earth. Both can be seen as a crystalline matrix or pattern, a complex network of interactive filaments of light, extending outward from the physical body in measurements equal in scale and proportion to that of the Earth itself. As it extends outward, where does it go? What does it interact with? Among these considerations, how much easier is it for us to grasp that beyond the borders of our physical bodies, there exists several more subtle layers that serve our little lives in the same manner as they serve the greater life of the planet Earth? This is an important point to ponder. The detailed study of the etheric body, its purpose and potentials, both individually and logoically, may largely be less important at this time in human evolution than the concrete recognition that this body exists in our conscious day-to-day awareness, and that it serves the evolution of substance by informing subtle to dense, etheric to physical, above to below. It is only with this recognition, clear in our conscious awareness, that we can approach a detailed survey of the human etheric body, with all its channels, its major and minor centers, and the varied ways and means in which these collectively interact with the larger body in which we live and move and have our being. It may very well become that part of the new age of Aquarius will, with finality, herald the conscious recognition of our more etheric reality in our daily lives, avocations, attitudes, and behaviors. If we lack this basic clarity and approach the local etheric structures conceptually and only in relation to the physical experience, we may miss its deeper meaning, which I might state today as it isn't about a center, a chakra, a channel, a point, and or what they control or do in the physical world. It's about the continuity of life and its freedom and ease of expression in each and every aspect of itself, an expression characterized by its diversity and contextualized by its shared source. The energetic sciences, a term to further initiate the scientific process to explore with greater vigor the more subtle aspects of our collective reality, need to stay focused on the continued development and tangible expression of these subtle fields through the various fifth ray expressions of concrete science. The technique of acupuncture in our modern times can be a great example of this paradigm. When I place an acupuncture needle into the dense physical substrate, it isn't to enact some form of control over the physical system. It is neither to suppress or elaborate any particular aspect of the physical physiology, despite all that has been said and written about it. For decades, modern science has been studying acupuncture from the viewpoint of the physical world, and hence, as of yet, has little note to show for the effort and little understanding of its mechanics. What has been discovered time and time again is that some definite effect is taking place, but that the regions of use, the points themselves, seem to be less important in precipitating its effect. Acupuncture is still conceptualized in the West, and this is a byproduct of how Chinese medicine was remodeled culturally during the Great Leap Forward in the civil politics in China in the mid to late 1900s, as a type of magical button that once touched will miraculously turn off or turn on some inner state of harmony that will make all our pain and suffering go away. There are many factors that go into the perpetuation of this view, but today we can attempt to clarify it further in our group endeavor and approach the practice with greater intelligence. Acupuncture formalizes a concrete interaction between the subtle world, which is called etheric, and its dense physical counterpart. It is an act of communication, not unlike harnessing the power of lightning through the use of a lightning rod. It has the power to convey into the dense physical substrate information circulating in the subtle etheric world, worlds which we cannot perceive with our physical senses, but know exist when we turn the power of our attention to scales more perceivable in the great hologram life. Acupuncture needles are made of highly conductive materials and placed into highly conductive low impedance locations within the physical substrate. When this occurs, and in combination with each other, they are able to convey a clarity of intent and meaning from those more subtle energies circulating in the field, the etheric field, directly into the dense physical substrate. This catalyzes a return to some dependent degree. It balances innate electrical polarity and further regulates function throughout the entire organism by exposing the dense aspects of the human nervous system to the information circulating in the etheric equivalent. The physical is not a principle. In order to effect change, real change, change that is in harmony with our greater life, we must open the local system and expose it directly to the conditional forces of our greater life. The mechanics of how this is done, its paradigm of inquiry, its varied techniques and methods, some of which have been held in familial traditions for centuries or even millennia, all stand ready for inspection and interaction, but only when this context is kept firmly in mind Etheric purpose is thus made clear: to empower the flow of information circulating at large in the greater environment to pass with minimal impedance into the physical substrate so as to activate it, rectify it, clarify it, balance, and bring it into harmony with the greater life and the other varied forms in which we are often only unconsciously serving in the rectification of our group karma, in the evolution, substantively speaking, of this place we call Earth. As esotericists, we're familiar with the occult truism that the physical body is not a principle. But how do we live in relation to this knowledge? Contemplation along these lines is sufficient to resolve that great heresy of separation, which still holds much of our human kingdom enchained. We might consider that if all life on the earth is alive within a dynamic energetic field, a field in which we know is there, but cannot see with our physical senses, a field which we know extends for thousands of miles above the Earth's more physical manifestation, a field of electricity and information, a field enlightened and made radiant by fire, a field that connects, protects, and enables communication with all the life aspects that call this place their home. If all this is true, we, each of us, can consider, why do we live the way we live? Eat the way we eat, think the way we think, love the way we love. When we look out onto the world, what we inevitably see is the byproduct or externalization of how we see our own inner reality. We build our cities, model our neighborhoods and homes, invent our technologies in direct expression of how we understand and see ourselves. To change the world, to build a new world, to create with greater clarity and sustainability, we need only consciously recognize that which is right before us. We have all the answers we need. Nothing is hidden from view. The study of the etheric body is one of those great portals into our future. It stands open before us, ready to admit those with the necessary fitness and equipment needed for the task. For when we as a group can concretely grasp the reality of our etheric nature and can infuse our day-to-day attitudes and behaviors with this reality, then will we truly initiate ourselves into a new world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zed. There's an awful lot to think about in that. It particularly addresses to me that one of the things that really touched me in what you have to say is the physical interpretation, the material interpretation of acupuncture that began to be applied in the late 90s, late 1990s and sort of earlier in Mao's time in China. And how interesting it is that perhaps even though acupuncture is being looked at scientifically from a physical material sense, listening to what you have to say reveals that it may well be that it is through acupuncture and this great tradition of the East that the West will be led into looking at spirit behind form, into looking at this whole area of subtle energies. And that in a sense, that's the essential crisis that certainly for science has to face. So thank you, Zed.
Thank you.
Now we deal with it. Okay, my watch says 3:30, which is the time that we've had our 10-minute break, and we are just about to start the Wesak meeting. Okay, let's give ourselves 10 minutes, because I think it's good to have a break before we really start this Wesak focus. Unfortunately, the sharing is all to be done etherically and through the chat. But it makes sense to me that following with, we're establishing a new rhythm so that we have a pause. All of us on the call and here in the room have a moment to reorient, move our bodies, and then return. We want to be back here definitely within 10 minutes. Michael, is this going to work okay, do you think? Okay. I apologize to those who are just joining in, expecting to start. We'll be starting the Wesak meeting in 10 minutes' time. Okay, Chris, I assume you're there, and we will see you in 10 minutes, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much, Zed, Reiko, Mark Try, Kathy, everybody. Thank you. We'll see you soon.
You're a co-host now.
Serena?
You're a co-host now.
Yes.
You just made your co-host.
Yes. I think that last talk would make a nice beacon article.
It was excellent.
Yeah,
It was the best one by far.
I think so. So,
Yeah, I agree with you.
yeah, because we're looking for articles. Simon and I, amidst all of this, had the beacon to finish this month. So, and we're still looking for articles.
Well, that was really good.
Yeah. It's a nice length, it's not too long either. Some of the beacon articles are.
How long was that?
I would say, well, it was only supposed to be 10 minutes, so it's a bit longer than that, I think. It's probably about 1,500 words or so. But I probably still need something else. Never mind, we'll find something.
Yeah, don't stress about that now because you
No.
have to do the meditation and the talk. Just relax.
I feel
Meditation meeting. What? Yeah. All right, we're about ready to get started, I think. We're all making our way back into the room right now. Chris, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks, Michael. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Chris.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Well, hello to you all who are physically attending the meeting in New York, and welcome to all who are tuning in via the internet from around the world to celebrate together this great festival of Wesak. We'll start with a presentation, and this will be followed by the full moon approach to the hierarchy meditation. For those who may be new to these events, our festival meetings are organized according to the rhythm of the full moon and to the sun's passage through the astrological signs of the zodiac. The Aegis Wisdom teachings advise that the festival of Wesak is held on the day of the full moon when the sun is in Taurus. And so this year, it coincides with the worldwide Buddhist celebration. The religion of the coming age will be built around periods of the full moon. Particularly the approach is made at the time of the Wesak full moon and the full moon of June, but also at the time of a solar or lunar eclipse. And so it's of interest and significance that we will be experiencing a lunar eclipse shortly before the peak of the full moon at 12:13 EDT and 5:13 BST tomorrow morning, British summertime. So let us take a few moments of quiet, and then we'll sound the mantram, the Gayatri. O thou who givest sustenance to the universe, from whom all things proceed, to whom all things return. Unveil to us the face of the true spiritual sun, hidden by a disk of golden light, that we may know the truth and do our whole duty as we journey to thy sacred feet. At this high point of the spiritual year, in a valley in the Himalayas, the Buddha has set to act as a divine emissary for the head of our planetary scheme, Sanat Kumara, carrying his divine force to the planetary center of love, the spiritual hierarchy, and from there on to humanity. This transmission is facilitated by the alignment between the sun, earth, and moon, which provides an open pathway for spiritual energies to permeate human consciousness. And at the peak of the full moon, the Buddha is said to hover overhead before the assembled hierarchy, with Christ receiving the blessing of divine will from the Buddha on behalf of humanity. And this close cooperation between the Buddha and Christ is symbolic of the bridging of East and West, and it has led to the Wesak festival being described as the greatest event upon our planet from the standpoint of the spiritual verities, and the one which has the greatest effect upon the human race. And this profound statement highlights the opportunity before us to strengthen the vital bridge between East and West, as well as the bridge between humanity and divinity, of course. So the festival of the Buddha brings the forces of enlightenment closer to humanity and provides the stimulus for the expression of compassion, which characterizes those who see life clearly and are therefore able to identify with the suffering of all sentient beings. The sign of Taurus, in which the festival is held, is also connected with desire and will, which could be said to embody both the worst and the best of human motives and achievements. For humanity as a whole, the default position has been the cultivation of desire, a pleasurable acquiescence in its satisfaction, and the experience of suffering as the inevitable consequence of this unredeemed habit of living. But Wesak offers us all a reminder that this is only the surface of earthly reality. The deeper truth is it holds the fact of transcendence, of enlightenment, and of a life of unlimited empathy, motivated by a heart and mind that knows compassion in the deepest and most selfless sense. Our thoughts in recent months have been caught up, or should I say, preoccupied with the invasion of Ukraine and the terrible suffering that is being experienced there, as well as in the long-standing conflicts in other parts of the world. Then we have the encroaching issues of the climate change crisis, tensions in international relations, and concerns over nuclear proliferation. And through the ever-increasing efficiency of the world communication networks, people around the world have been participating in these crises emotionally and mentally, and we are all watching together with dismay the sad state of planetary affairs. And it's quite difficult to observe these crises analytically and impartially, for we are dependent on how the information is conveyed to us, from which source and by what media. Often it's filtered through political lenses and distorted by propaganda. But in order to see all this clearly, it's vital to practice detachment, detached observation, as Buddha taught. And being inspired by his teaching, we know that the eye has to see beyond the fray. Through taking this higher stance, it becomes possible to transmit the light, love, and will to good which is so abundantly available, particularly at this most important celebration of the spiritual year. In this great ceremonial ritual of Wesak, we are reminded that the great ones, the Buddha, the Christ, the Lord of the world, have never left humanity alone and unaided. And the promise of a great and glorious future awaits each one of us by dint of these and other exalted beings and lives who have chosen to remain on earth to serve divine evolutionary purpose. The Buddha and the Christ, the masters of the wisdom, initiates and disciples of all degrees, are living examples that the Wesak is above all a festival of compassion and of divine protection. By their presence and through the redemptive energies they can wield, they stand ready to radiate human consciousness wherever and whenever the opportunity arises. The Buddha's great teaching was, of course, the cessation of suffering by treading the noble eightfold path. And these steps have been translated for us as right belief, right intention, right speech, right actions, right living, right endeavor, right-mindedness, and right concentration or contemplation. As with all enduring spiritual truths or wisdom, they can be read and applied at different levels of consciousness, and they indicate courses of action that require lifetimes of practical application for results to be fully achieved. For instance, a different and higher perspective on compassion is given in the voice of silence, where it's said to be no attribute, but is instead the law of laws, eternal harmony, the law of love eternal. And in a footnote, we are advised that this compassion is an abstract, impersonal law whose nature, being absolute harmony, is thrown into confusion by discord, suffering, and sin. In this sense, compassion becomes a point of dynamic tension, which holds all things in equilibrium. So as the Buddha's compassion for all sentient beings led him to pursue a path which could end all suffering, so another great sage, Patanjali, saw compassion as a state of feeling which, together with tenderness and dispassion, enables us to forge a true union with others through one-pointed meditation. And through compassion, one enters and suffers with one's brother or sister. And by adapting one's vibration to respond to another's need, all that is taking place in their heart can be shared. This is done not through an emotional response, but through the keying up of one's own vibration to respond to the love nature of the soul. Through that unifying principle, all hearts everywhere lie open to us. Through tenderness, compassion is translated into practical expression, while through dispassion, we develop a mental quality which leads to inclusiveness and unity with others, free from the desire which binds and imprisons. Patanjali suggests that compassion embraces the physical plane as well as the mental and emotional planes, because it leads to the working out into physical manifestation of the two other states. It is the practical ability to identify oneself with another in all three world conditions. So the quality of compassion and identification with others was demonstrated to the highest degree by the Buddha. And despite being born into royalty, wealth, and privilege, he became acutely aware of the suffering all around him and sought to understand the cause. He questioned the transience of life, and after entering into meditation and successfully delving into the world of meaning and cause, he gave out to humanity teachings which remain valid to this day. And they can be used as a basis for our experimentation, experience, and expression until we too can touch the plane of Buddhi and be released from a sense of separation that so characterizes the human kingdom. Thousands of years after his incarnation, the great need of our time continues to be one of enlightenment, of the development of the intuition, which, quote, knows instead of knowing about. It knows, and without any medium, the oneness of all things and the cycles of becoming, large and small, by which that unity, in a vast field of diversity, in some way achieves its own high purposes. And the Buddha used his mind as an inner eye to find the truth he was seeking, and the light which irradiated his consciousness revealed simple truths about the human condition. He summarized this into the well-known Four Noble Truths, paraphrased as, cease to identify yourselves with material things, gain a proper sense of spiritual values, cease regarding possessions and earthly existence as of major importance. Follow the noble eightfold path, which is the path of right relations to God and to each other, and thus be happy. What seemed to stand out here is the instruction to cease to regard earthly existence as of major importance. Our understanding of reality and identity needs to be reorientated to the universal love, light, and purpose which infuse our true being. Our sense both of divine compassion and the demonstration of our common humanity leads us to question how we can shape the future so that a reordering in the nature of religious life can take place. One in which the rhythmic approach at the time of the full moon forms a part of. So this brings us to a statement on the significance of the Wesak festival in the externalization of the hierarchy, where we read that there is an increasing emphasis being given in the West by esotericists to the full moon of May, the festival of the Buddha. There have been two main reasons why, since 1900, this effort has been made. One was the desire on the part of the hierarchy to bring the attention of the public to the fact of the two avatars, the Buddha and the Christ, both upon the second ray of love wisdom, who were the first of our humanity to come forth as human divine avatars, and to embody in themselves certain cosmic principles and give them form. And the Buddha embodied the principle of light, and because of this illumination, humanity was enabled to recognize Christ, who embodied the greater principle of love. And the Buddha demonstrated the consummation of substance matter as the medium of light, hence his title of the Illumined One. Christ embodied the underlying energy of consciousness, and these two together present one perfect whole. And the second reason was to initiate the theme of the New World religion. And we are given a vision of this future religion as one which will eventually underlie all religious observances, color all approaches to the divine center of spiritual life, give the clue to all healing processes, and using light scientifically, govern all techniques for bringing about conscious unity and relationship between a man and his soul, between humanity and hierarchy. So working in the influences of the sign of Taurus, perhaps we can see this vision slowly materializing. The selfish will of humanity, symbolized in this sign by the bull rushing recklessly forward, is tempered by those who work unceasingly for increased enlightenment in all departments of human endeavor. And if we are to counteract the selfish will, which leads to destruction and disintegration, whether national or individual, we need to mobilize the will which is based on altruism and which can only be safely wielded by those who love. Human suffering caused by the bull of desire has to be consciously redirected into a fiery aspiration and to a spiritual will, a will that leads to the mountain of vision and initiation in a new era of goodwill. So we work towards this new era by invoking the light bearers, the masters of the wisdom, who in turn invoke the lights which carry out the will of God. And these spiritual lives stand ready for a great act of evocation to temporarily work more closely with humanity until a powerful earthly hierarchy will factually, externally, and in reality hold sway on earth. As part of the invocation and evocation process of the Wesak ceremony, it's said when the Buddha reaches the site of the ritual, a great mantram used only once a year at the festival is intoned by the Christ. And this invocation sets up a great vibration or thought current, which is of such potency that it reaches up from the group of aspirants, disciples, or initiates who employ it, to God, to the Logos himself. It marks a supreme moment of intensive spiritual effort throughout the year, and the spiritual vitalization of humanity and the spiritual effects last throughout the succeeding months. The new group of world servers who are responsive as souls in varying degrees to these higher influences collectively act as an organ of vision for humanity, and upon them the illuminating rays of Taurus constantly shine. And Taurus is said to hide the secret of divine purpose and reveals it by touching and opening the eye of light and those who are ready to use that which it conveys for the greater good. The group is symbolized by the bull of Taurus rushing forward towards divinity and leaving a trail of light in its wake to illumine the way for those who follow. And together, this group of service, like their elder brothers, are agents of revelation. And all who serve and love their fellow men as souls are part of this group process. As the time of the full moon approaches, the registration of the Wesak energies usher in a mounting spiritual tension. And this period is a waiting activity, reflecting a process that takes place in the center where the will of God is known. A silent gathering of power that occurs as purpose is concentrated prior to transmission. On our own level, we repeat the process, contemplating the latent power to be released through the alignment between ourselves, the spiritual hierarchy, the Christ, the Buddha, and the Lord of the world. So during this gathering process, we can reflect on the divine power that will be circulated and visualize the heart centers of millions of people awakening and coming into alignment with the planetary heart center, and the beauty and order that will unfold in human civilization as a result. To materialize this vision of the future and help make it a reality, we have to act wholeheartedly in the present without calculation or reservation, making sure that the only light that guides our vision is the light of compassion and unity. So now it's time to go into meditation, making a conscious approach to the highest sources of truth and tapping into the bountiful, redeeming light of the inner planes. Holding our minds open to these forces of enlightenment, we work to spiritually rejuvenate our world. We visualize the energies of Wesak growing and the Christ and the Buddha preparing to transmit those potencies that will condition the planet throughout the year ahead. As brothers of revelation, their work continues to lift a ravaged world up towards the realm of truth and beauty. Our cooperation and meditation forms an essential part of the hierarchical chain, and through transmuted desire and a silent and fiery aspiration, the light of Wesak is shed abroad in our hearts, through our group, and throughout the world. So we'll use the keynote for the disciple in the sign of Taurus now. I see, and when the eye is open, all is light. Group fusion. We affirm the fact of group fusion and integration within the heart center of the new group of world servers, mediating between hierarchy and humanity. I am one with my group brothers, and all that I have is theirs. May the love which is in my soul pour forth to them. May the strength which is in me lift and aid them. May the thoughts which my soul creates reach and encourage them. Alignment. We project a line of lighted energy towards a spiritual hierarchy of the planet, the planetary heart, in the great ashram of Sanakamara, and towards the Christ at the heart of hierarchy. Extend the line of light towards Shambhala, the center where the will of God is known. Higher interlude. We hold the contemplative mind open to the extraplanetary energies streaming into Shambhala and radiated through hierarchy. Using the creative imagination, endeavor to see the three planetary centers, Shambhala, hierarchy, and humanity, gradually coming into alignment and interplay. reflect on the seed thought. I see, and when the eye is opened, all is light. precipitation, using the creative imagination, we visualize the energies of light, love, and the will to good pouring throughout the planet and becoming anchored on Earth in prepared physical plane centers through which the plan can manifest. Use the sixfold progression of divine love as a sequence of energy precipitation. Shambhala, hierarchy, the Christ, the new group of world servers, men and women of goodwill everywhere in the world, physical centers of distribution. Lower interlude. Refocus the consciousness as a group within the periphery of the great ashram. We sound the affirmation. In the center of all love I stand. From that center, I, the soul, will outward move. From that center, I, the one who serves, will work. May the love of the divine self be shed abroad in my heart, through my group, and throughout the world. We visualize the downpouring spiritual inflow released from Shambhala through the hierarchy and streaming into humanity through the prepared channel. Consider how these inpouring energies are establishing the pathway of light for the coming world teacher, the Christ. distribution. As the great invocation is sounded, we visualize the outpouring of light and love and power from the hierarchy through the 5 planetary inlets: London, Darjeeling, New York, Geneva, Tokyo, irradiating the consciousness of the whole human race. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you, everyone. Such a magical and powerful meditation to close the broadcast and the conference. Let's now hold the spiritual tension we've generated as we move towards the Wesak. At 12:13 EDT and 5:13 AM British summertime tomorrow. You're also warmly invited to attend the Geneva and London conferences and the Gemini full moon, details of which are going to be posted on the PowerPoint which follows. So we're signing off with grateful appreciation for all the work and inspiration which has gone into the conference, from speakers, attendees even, and the speakers themselves. Thank you very much.